expressed in this show belong to the person expressing them. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of Rancher or any other entity.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Coffee and Cloud Native, the show that shares news and interesting content related to Kubernetes, Cloud Native, and other nifty technology. My name is Adrian Goins, and I once again forgot to update my title, but I'm still really excited to be here with you today on this gloomy, overcast Tuesday. If you're watching live, consider following or subscribing to the channel. I don't know why that word was really hard. If you're watching a replay in the future, please give the video a thumbs up so the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. Live chat happens in Discord, and I'll share that link with you. There it is. Right, so live chat happens in Discord. There's a bot that relays between YouTube and Twitch, so, come hang out with us either during the show or after. And as you'll see in a moment, live chat is absolutely insane. So let's take a moment and say hello to those who are joining us here today. Wifebot, Leffen, good morning. Ian, Mose, Duck, Nuno, wow, Shipwreck, hello. Chrysalis, Peter Keach. Dun, dun, dun. I saw some other people here. Matthew Cooper. I love that all of you show up like a half an hour early. Thank you. That's really nice. Frank, good morning. Who else do we got? Continuing the scroll back, Ariel. I saw Bala here too. And of course, if you're not in the chat, but you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, well, hello. Anyway, you can use those chats and that cool magical relay thing happens. Dirk, nice. Actually, I just totally scrolled back too far. Dirk is not here today. Dirk was here yesterday. All right. Yeah, so let's get started. I have no news today, so we'll go right into the A/B test. The collector bots have gathered candidates for today's show. Trufflebot has scored them from 1 to 5 coffees. He will post them one at a time in Discord. Anyone watching live can rate them, and your votes are used to train the machine learning model that curates content for the show. So get in there and vote. Dirk is with us in spirit. I don't know where Dirk is. Dirk is working. Right. Okay. Wow. It's like extra holiday days totally screw me up. I'm like, I don't remember what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to press that button, and then I'm supposed to type this command, and then I'm supposed to say, first up today, we have this. On a previous show, I don't remember if it was a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or a month ago, because time as a concept is irrelevant. And Wifebot and I have actually been talking about there are entire civilizations that have no concept of time. Like, we can't fathom how that is because we do have a concept of time. There are also civilizations that don't understand color. Like, all colors are the same to them until you name two different colors, and then suddenly they can see the difference between them. Anyway, so time is irrelevant. On a previous show, at some point, I had something that talked about using the cluster autoscaler and actually putting pods in place that are low priority so that you have capacity and you have low priority things that can get bumped so that you can increase capacity without having to wait for the cluster to actually scale. Well, some genius over at Red Hat, well, actually, I don't know if they're actually Red Hats. Red Hat Cop. Okay. Some genius created an operator to do that for us. So the idea here is that cluster autoscaler doesn't trigger until you actually have pending workloads, but by then you already need the capacity. So this will allow you to allocate a certain percentage of the available capacity of the cluster to dummy workloads that are lower priority, and then those get bumped, your new workloads go into there, and now those dummy workloads become the pending workloads, and they don't matter. And that triggers the autoscaling. So this is an operator. You can deploy it from Operator Hub. You can deploy it if you're using the OC command, or you can deploy it with Helm, or you can do all sorts of other stuff with it. This was almost a tool of the day, except I know Shipwreck likes to bash on tool of the day, and I didn't want to make Shipwreck go and deploy a whole bunch of cluster capacity. Next up, we have, yes, this popped up and it was like, Kubernetes is now available. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I want to use Kubernetes. This is a VPS provider that I've never heard of before. So this is not an endorsement of their service. However, they have really cheap Kubernetes clusters available for you now. So they've made available a managed Kubernetes service. And let's go to their Kubernetes clusters page. Basically, it's like the other Kubernetes services. You pay for the work. Where's my coffee? You pay for the worker nodes. You don't appear to pay for the control plane nodes. And you can get a load balancer for $10 a month or dot. You can get a load balancer for $10 a month. Their load balancers are pretty robust, which I thought was interesting. So 2 gigabytes of RAM, 2 vCPU cores, 20 gigabytes of storage because you need that on your load balancer, and 1 IPv4 and 1 IPv6 address. Oh, IPv6, that's cool. And then when you get into the actual compute instances pricing, so you only get 2 vCPU cores, but you do get 8 gigabytes of RAM for $20 a month. They don't have larger instances than that. Obviously, they have smaller instances, as you can see there. Things that I liked about this that caught my attention were they actually price their stuff based off of 28-day months. Just because, why not? That's easy. So, in a month that has more than 28 days, you're actually getting some number of days free. That's cool. You can get Windows licenses. Their other usage for traffic overages look pretty cheap. They've got some other stuff going on there, block storage, so on and so forth. They appear to have been around for a while. They have locations in London, Amsterdam, Dallas, Fremont, Bucharest, and someplace I've never heard of that I'm not even going to say, but it's that word right there. Anybody knows where that is? Tell us in the chat. So if you're looking for a cheap cluster, or a cheap place to host your stuff, give them a try. Let us know how they are. Because Kubernetes is now available. Before y'all go and downvote this, being like, this has nothing to do with cloud native, bro. Bear with me. I thought it was going to be a more in-depth article, and when I reviewed it this morning, I decided to keep it on the show because the information that it has in there is actually relevant, not just on its own, but to something that's coming up a little bit later in the show. This talks about how you can combine and statements with or statements to come up with some basic one-liner logic. And it continues, basically you have do this and do that or do that. So you have a first command that if it's successful, will execute the second command, and if it's not successful, will execute the third command. If you've done any kind of shell scripting, you already know how to do this. If you're new to shell scripting, welcome to the show. I suspect that most of the people who watch the show already understand this. I like the idea of using the ands and the ors, but it does bring up the discussion point of if this sort of thing increases complexity in readability and in the ability for somebody to understand what's going on. And then there are some caveats here. So for example, ID this and make dir that, or ID this other thing and make dir this other thing. Well, if the ID is successful, but the make dir is not successful, you'll still end up executing these other commands. So you've got to be careful with this. And frequently in my scripts, I trade these for actual if then else statements. Oh yeah, so then he talks about tests and so on. So here you go. He closes with some ways that you can introduce idempotency to make your scripts idempotent, the word that nobody actually knows how to pronounce and that I'm probably saying wrong. Idempotent? I don't know. So you can have two commands that actually will result in the same thing. So if the file already exists or the work's already been done, then the first command fails, but the second one checks so that you're not actually overwriting files, which is the bad way to do idempotency. So here you go, really basic intro into combining ands and ors to do some stuff. It'll become relevant in a little bit. More relevant. I mean, it's relevant on its own, but it will be more relevant. We have had stuff on frequently from Techworld with Nana. She creates tutorials and educational stuff, and she has just launched a full course on Terraform. Terraform is something that everybody uses. I don't use it, not because I don't like it, but because I have no infrastructure that I'm constantly deploying and tearing down. But if you work with any kind of cloud environment or anything where you are actually spinning up and tearing down infrastructure, infrastructure as code is definitely something you want in your tool belt. If you're new to this, or if you're self-taught and you want some, like, I look at a lot of this stuff where I'm self-taught and it's like a piece of Swiss cheese. Like, it's still a piece of cheese and it's absolutely delicious, but there's holes in it, and I recognize that. Or you can think of it like, looking up at the night sky and there's a bunch of different stars, but what I want are constellations. Courses like this are helpful for me to fill in the gaps. I know a lot of this stuff. Maybe there's something I don't know, or maybe there's something that'll allow me to connect to things, and through that association, we retain the information better. This just was announced last week, and so there's a link there to 30% off coupon if you go and sign up on Udemy. Next. Aurelie has been on the show before and just popped back up with continuing the Understanding Docker sketchnotes series. She's up to part 30 on this. And I absolutely love these. I think they're absolutely adorable. So here are some sketchnotes on how to, do what's she talking about today? How to stop and restart a container. Something that, again, those of you who watch the show probably already know how to do. Good for you. These skills, though, are things that lots of people don't know how to do. And this whole series that she has is wonderful for introducing people to container technologies, kind of like you're handing them like a warm blanket on a cold winter's day. And what I was excited to find is that she's actually put together a book of these sketch notes called Understanding Docker in a Visual Way. You can name your own price. From 10 euros on up, and it's 93 pages, it's a digital PDF. It's like making learning fun. So we love what Aurelie is doing. Good job. Go buy her book. Not a sponsor. All right. I met with these folks last week. Their webpage doesn't have a lot of information, which was one of the things that I brought up. So I think what they're doing is interesting, and I decided to put it on the show just to share it with you. And I'm actually so you can watch their little 4-minute video and it will explain what it is. You can click on play with the prototype and it will take you to their alpha, which has some information on like how to install it and what it does and so on. But if you just looked at this, you may not. You may not. What do they have under docs? I haven't even looked at that. Do they got more in docs? Spinning. How many of you would have just clicked off the page at this point? Actually, this might be my, oh yeah, this is totally my ad blocking. Oops, you seem to be offline. Okay. I love when docs pages don't load because of ad blocking stuff. Basically, the idea behind Digger is that deploying to Amazon is hard. And as a developer, you shouldn't have to learn how to do all of that. You shouldn't have to learn about VPCs and ECS and you shouldn't have to because you don't care. You're a developer. You want to develop. So Digger is a CLI/web UI. It has CLI functionality and then also a web UI for status reporting that is designed to help developers launch apps and get up and running as quickly as possible. It uses Terraform. It deploys its own CI system. It stores its stuff in GitHub. And you don't need to worry about infrastructure. Currently, it only supports AWS, but they're in like super alpha, and they are requesting feedback. So if this is something that's interesting, as I continue talking about it, please pull it down, take it for a test drive, and then hit them up and let them know what's good, what's not good, and they'll iterate on it to try and make more of this and less of that. So it creates scaffolding Well, it includes scaffolding. So when you first go to deploy your app, it says, well, what kind of app is this? Is it a Python app? Is it a React app? Is it a this? And then it creates scaffolding around that type of web application. It creates a prod environment and a sandbox environment, and it returns URLs for you almost instantaneously that you can use to access those environments. When you make changes, the sandbox environment is updated instantly. And so you can be testing your stuff in real time. And then when you commit and push, the prod environment gets updated. It is microservices aware. It is environment aware. So you can have staging or whatever. It has custom infrastructure. Sorry, it has standard infrastructure templates, but it's completely customizable. So you can change it however you want if you're a power user. And one of its coolest features is that it does A/B routing based on pre-warmed capacity. What does that mean? Well, you'll see it in their video, but it means that you can push a change and it'll hand you back a URL immediately, even while Terraform is off doing its thing. And that's because it keeps capacity on standby that it uses while the new infrastructure is building. And then once the infrastructure is built, it just changes the routing to point to that. This is Digger. I think they're onto something. Everybody's trying to solve the developer problem. And I think it's worthwhile for us to look at everybody's idea on the way that they are solving the pain that they've experienced. These guys come from a developer background, and you can go look at their credentials, and they identify areas of struggle and are trying to create a solution to help people overcome those things. So check it out. Let them know what you think. Next. Wow, that was really slow. I don't know. Next. I don't use GitHub Actions, but I see a lot of stuff coming up about GitHub Actions. This is a little bit of an older article. This is from January of this year. This guy presents a bunch of different ways to do, basically to push the limits of what you can do with GitHub Actions and to make it more functional. So for example, here's how you can run conditional stuff. So you can run, if this, then that, and oh my gosh, look, if this equals that, then do this or do that. Foreshadowing revealed. So you can use what we saw earlier with the combined and or parameters and perform stuff. So here you have the matrix. Job is a list of A and B. And so if matrix.job is A, then do something. If it's B, then do something else. Or if it's not A, I suppose, which in this case means it is B. You can do more elaborate conditional stuff where you can have instead of just and ors or equals or whatever, you could have greater than, less than. So you have conditional functionality. And he goes on to talk about how you can use the matrix to dynamically pull secret names based on look at that, based on variables, so that you can have the same GitHub Actions file actually pulling content from the right place for the right environment in which it's being deployed. And then he goes into this thing that I didn't, because I don't use GitHub Actions, I didn't fully follow, and I kind of think that he might actually have an error in this, but I'm not 100% sure. So here we have static environments. So you can directly declare what environment is dev or prod, and then great. And then down here, he talks about using a workflow dispatch. So you can have environment description, environment to deploy to, required true. I think workflow dispatch asks you a question, accepts input. I'm not 100% sure. And then down here, he talks about how to use this in a dynamic environment. So I think this might be incorrect, but I'm not sure. I went and looked at his topic that he posted on the forum where he was asking about how to do dynamic environment stuff. And apparently there's a short form and a long form. And the long form works. So somebody down here in post number 3 said that, here, so we got environment Europe, Asia, etc. And then he was able to use, matrix.url and matrix.environment. But back over here, I was confused because it looks like he's using matrix.environment, but I can't see where he actually gets environment as a variable. So this might be correct, might be a typo. Anyway, it's still super cool. And then moves on to how to do stuff with private actions, which I thought was also really neat, where you can have it. There's a limitation right now where you can't use private actions in, let's see, what is this? So the problem is you can only use publicly available actions. It's interesting for organizations to build custom actions that they don't want to share with anyone outside of the company. At the time of writing, the GitHub public roadmap shows that this feature is planned, but not before the end of Q2 2021. So his solution is to create a repo that contains your private actions and then check that out at the same time that you're doing all of the other work. So you can check out your primary repository, the one you're actually operating on, and then you can check out the actions repository. And so they've got all of this with how to use your personal access token. And then from the actions repository, you can execute private actions on the operational repository. And it continues on with, triggering stuff on pull request merge and so on and so forth. Neat stuff. I love people who figure out how to do more with the tools that are available to us than what they're necessarily designed to do. Yeah. Where I saw that there are 2 mentions in the live chat, but nothing was beeping at me. So scrolling really quick, and since it's all GIFs, I don't see what people were mentioning me for. So if you were trying to get my attention, say it again. Next up. Next up, recursion. If you don't do development, you can just drink your coffee and kick back for a minute. Recursion is taking a function and calling it from itself to solve recursive instances of the problem that the function is trying to resolve. So the example, an example is, imagine that you have something that's trying to do a sum of all the values in a list, but it's really tiny. But there are sub-lists or arrays if you're an array person. So how do you create an algorithm that flattens that and then can do the sum? This is less about how to do those things and more about how to approach those problems. The way that people tend to approach those problems is they solve the harder problem before solving the simpler problem. And this article from Max says that if you just concentrate on solving the simpler problem, the harder problem solves itself. And this is important when you're dealing with recursive problems that your brain has a difficult time staying connected to. Flattening a list of lists, we can understand that. You just remove all of the brackets and there you go, you got the numbers. But he comes down here to an iterative problem where imagine that in this example here, you want to find the node with a value of 21. So how do you have to descend into trees. Okay, I got to that, then recurse back and then descend into another one and then come back until you find the node you want and then exit completely. This is a much harder problem to solve unless you solve the simpler portion of it first. So without going into the detail and depth of the article, it's about a 15-minute read, super in-depth, and is a really good approach to the logical structure of problem solving in your own life or in programming, and how to come up with really simple, elegant, algorithmic solutions for those problems. Do we have time for one more? Yeah, we do. I write my stuff in Python. You all know that. I use virtual environments for everything. And I just, I come from the Python 2 world, so I just, now I do Python 3, M, V, and VNV. Do you say Venv? I don't know. VNV, whatever. And then I create a virtual environment. And I have one of these for every single one of my projects, and I like activate it and deactivate it. This article talks about other things that exist for the same functionality. I didn't know that there were other things. I was excited to find that there's Pipenv, which actually looks to be a little bit better at solving the problem of manually keeping track of what's going on in requirements.txt. When you use a virtual environment with VENV, somebody tell me how to say that. I'm gonna go jump over to the live chat. Somebody tell me, how do you say that? Venv? Snakes. When you're adding stuff with pip, when you're in your virtual environment, you have to do pip freeze and then pipe that or output that to requirements.txt. And and you can get other things in there that you don't necessarily need or want or whatever. Pipenv tries to solve that by automatically keeping track of everything that you install and then keeping a separate lock file for things that are pinned to specific dependency versions. That separation sounds like a cleaner environment. And then rather than having to do activate and deactivate, you can just do pipenv shell and get your, into your environment. So pipenv looks cool. There's also conda, which I have heard of before, but I haven't used. And what else does he have down here? And that's it. So some alternatives for your Python virtual environments. Pipenv? What? No. No. Yeah, Peter Keach says VENV. I just think it's one of those things that you're not supposed to say. You're just supposed to know. Oh, Duck says conda messes with my Java environment and that makes me mad. Well, okay, then don't use it. All right, I got to vote on that, and then we got to get out of here by doing the tool of the day. Today's tool of the day. Torsten. I don't know if you're watching. Torsten posted in Discord looking for a development solution that could mount a local directory into a container. And we've got, I went back and looked through all of our dev solutions. There's, telepresence, there's this. There are all sorts of tools trying to solve the developer problem. And I didn't find one that specifically addressed his issue, his question. And then this showed up in the bot feed last night. Ksync speeds up developers who build applications for Kubernetes. It transparently updates containers running on the cluster from your local checkout. This enables developers to use their favorite IDEs, such as Atom or Sublime Text. Wow, no VS Code mention. Okay. To work from inside a cluster or instead of from outside it. There's no reason to wait minutes to test code changes when you can see the result in seconds. So this appears to do exactly what he was looking for, where your local changes from your local directory are, they got this cool little demo here, where he changes the content of the app here and then exits, and it instantaneously changes to demo v2 in the output from the server. Black magic, but looks like it'll solve Torsten's problem. Shipwreck will hopefully have some time to kick the tires on this immediately after the show. So if you want to join for that, that is in the Tool of the Day channel on Discord. So Torsten, this is for you. Check it out. Let us know if it works. And with that, it's time to go. That's it. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Links to everything I talk about on the show go up in the free community site at community.cncn.io after the show ends. Come join us. Community members get early access to the links, video replay, and other exclusive content. If you have something you would like me to consider for the show, post it in the community site or in the show suggestions channel in Discord. Have a great day, everyone. Keep learning. It's Tuesday. Keep learning. Have a great week. I'll see you in the next show. Stay caffeinated.